What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Spark to Fire. I'm your host, Landon Rhodes, and today I have the founder and the president of Allo Fiber, Brad Moline. How you doing today, bud?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thanks for coming in. We made a joke last time when Jeff Nordhook was on about Jeff, really up in the game and bringing beers. I gotta say, Brad has officially one-upped him. So if you guys are watching this on YouTube, you can see he's got IPAs from the Canopy Street Market, right?
Yep.
Which we talked about, and two delicious steaks, which he knows me too well. Love that stuff, and then some cold brew. So, man, the ante has been raised for Spark to Fire guests again.
Absolutely. You can't be outdone by Jeff.
No.
Which I'm sure I will be, but at least I can contribute.
He'll be sending stuff in. That's okay. You guys can keep sending it and keep bringing it with you. So thank you again for bringing that on.
Not a problem.
And so it sounds like being an entrepreneur runs in the family, runs inside of your family. That came from Canopy Street Market. So that's a really interesting fact I didn't really know. But your wife actually runs the Canopy Street Market in Lincoln, right?
Yeah, she's an owner, and it was her idea, and she runs it. And it joins the other two stores she has in eastern Colorado and one in western Nebraska and Imperial. So
that's awesome. So I love that. I love the family affair of entrepreneurship because you get it, right? Everybody understands you guys go through the same things. You said she has hundreds of employees. You have over 500 employees. Is that right now?
Yep.
So guys, Brad is, like I said, the president and founder of Allo. Allo, if you live in Nebraska, you should know what Allo is by now. They're the greatest internet on the planet as far as I'm concerned, mainly because when I call them, I rarely ever call them, but when I do, I have a great customer experience, and they just have incredibly high quality internet fiber. So I want to really dig into what in the world led you to starting this awesome company, kind of like a little bit about your past. What were you like as a kid? And then how did that play into your future career at Birch and all the other places that you went?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I was born in Lincoln. Only lived here for 5 days, but I was pretty sick when I was born, and they knew I was going to be sick, and so my parents lived in Bradshaw, a small town out in York County, and my dad's a farmer. He's retired now, but he still owns the land, and maybe the entrepreneurial side started when they figured out the Ogallala Aquifer in western Nebraska. Or throughout Nebraska, but particularly in western Nebraska, and they went from dryland farming to irrigated. Well, my dad was part of that and bought some land right after the development started. And so we picked up the family, moved out west, right on the Colorado and Nebraska border, and so there was a big risk. It wasn't like he had a family farm that had been in the family for generations. He kind of picked up and said, hey, I think there's a better way. And so that's where it started. And then I went to a small school, and you say, oh, small school, well, that had to be a challenge. Well, I was incredibly lucky. And in fact, one of our teachers while I was there who was involved with me for 3 grades. So that tells you how small the school was.
Then. How many kids in your graduating class?
Well, that was the small grade school. And
Okay.
I had between 7 and 9 kids in the class at different times. But this teacher then moved to Colorado Springs, and she became Colorado's Teacher of the Year one year.
Oh,
so we had that intense focus, which was just, Mrs. Hall, I can tie a lot of things back to her. Well, but my parents were they encouraged me to do whatever. So I started a rototilling business. They made me
rototilling, like tilling out gardens for
gardens
people?
and yards and those types of things, because I really hated it. But my parents made me take care of my lawn, or make me take care of our garden.
Yeah.
And so when we produced too many tomatoes, I said, well, why can't I sell them? And so I guess I was the Uber of rototillers way back when. I said, that thing sits most of the time. How about if I drive around and go take care of other people's gardens too and get paid for that? And then in junior high, started a band. So at 15, we started playing in Colorado's 3-2 bars because we were right on the border. And a 3-2 bar means you could drink at 18.
Oh, okay.
And so
you
at
go.
15 was the first time we played in Holyoke, Colorado, which was 18 miles from my house. And we still play today.
That's
So
incredible.
I think that had something to do with it. And it just created this, well, why not us?
Yeah, you had this why not us mentality from a, why can't I go use the rototiller to go make more money? And so what did you charge per garden, first of all?
I can't remember. I think it was like $10.
$10 a garden. I feel like that's decent money. You're out there for like an hour?
Oh, no,
No?
it'd be 2.5, 3
2.5
hours.
hours? Okay, some big gardens.
But when you're 10 or 11,
it's all the money in the world.
yeah.
And
And you live in the middle of nowhere, where are you going to spend it? There wasn't Amazon then.
No. What are you going to do? Where are you going to spend it? You're probably going to spend it on guitars for your band. So what position do you play in your band?
I'm a drummer.
Drummer?
As our lead singer, who actually teaches at Milford now, used to say, and particularly says now, we had 4 musicians and a drummer. So,
And what was the band called?
Time Trap. And I think the reason I was involved in it is because I had the business mind. So we didn't have a manager. So I would call these bars and say, hey, have you ever heard of so-and-so? Yeah, we're a lot like them. Do you have a demo tape? No, we haven't got around to that yet.
Well, we'll see you there.
Yeah. And they would agree to pay us. And hopefully most of the time they agreed to pay us again.
That's almost like the Richard Branson thing. Did you hear like when he was starting his magazine, he was like 16 in school and he was like making phone calls in like one of the teachers' offices to call Coca-Cola because he told them like that Pepsi was already advertising in their magazine and they got Coca-Cola to advertise in their magazine when that was like blowing up, right?
Yep.
That's kind of the same thing. So you were hustling from a very young age. I mean, and how old? You said you were like 10, 11?
10, 11 with rototilling, but 15 with the band.
That's incredible. Interesting. So what happened to that? You didn't follow the dream or continue the dream until later in life with the band, it sounds like. So what happened next?
Well, sometimes the quality that you're producing and the quality of my playing. The other guys were very talented, actually. And like I said, Phil still teaches at Milford, and so he made a career out of it. Mm-hmm. But I came to the University of Nebraska and I got an accounting degree. And then that's the next thing that fell in with entrepreneurism is I started with, back then it was Arthur Young, but Ernst & Young, an accounting firm, but in their entrepreneurial services group. And so we were a group of maybe 20 people that took care of customers mainly around the Kansas City metro area, but ended up going really across the country that were fast growing. We had Inc.'s fastest growing company one year. They were involved in asbestos removal out of Lawrence, Kansas, and those types of things. So I was around entrepreneurs for 5 years and exclusively.
Right inside of college. This is when you're like 18, 19, or this is later in college?
No, this is college. So it'd be 22 to 26.
Gotcha. So you were, wow, yeah. So you were surrounded immediately just with entrepreneurial thinkers. And were the people that you were surrounded with at the firm also really entrepreneurial thinkers as well? Yeah,
almost everybody who was involved in that firm has either started or run a company since.
Oh, cool.
And it was just amazingly lucky that I stumbled onto that.
And so I'm guessing that's a lead in to why you ended up going to Kansas City. Is that a fair statement? Yeah.
That was. I'd been to Kansas City twice in my life on 2 interviews. And, back then, again, it was 88. I just knew I worked in the tallest building in downtown. So I drove and looked out the window until I think I can walk from here, and pulled into a surface lot, walked the rest of the way. And the farm kid had then moved to Kansas City.
Yeah. So what building is that? Is that the Power and Light building?
It's down in the Power and Light area. It was One Kansas City Place.
One Kansas City Place. Gotcha. So what did you do in Kansas City when you got there?
Well, I worked for Ernst & Young in that entrepreneurial services group.
Oh, that was in Kansas City. Yep. Okay. Yep. Gotcha. And then from after Ernst & Young, where'd you go next?
I did a coffee break in Lincoln. I didn't think I liked big accounting firms, and I joined a regional accounting firm here, and realized that I just wasn't a very good public accountant anymore. And so met Dwayne Ackley, and he recommended me to a position in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So I took a company, Covenant Transport Public, as their CFO when I was 27. So I was a really young CFO and probably really unqualified at the time. But we worked hard, and we were there for 4 or 5 years, had about an 80% compound annual growth rate during that time. So we went from 80 million in revenue to, I think it was just over 400 million, maybe 500 million in that time. And then my wife, she didn't like Jill. She didn't really like the South. Didn't want to raise our kids there. And so our youngest was getting ready to start school, and she said, "Hey, I'm moving back to the Midwest. You can come along if you like."
Oh, okay.
Because she didn't. She wanted our kids to be in school in the Midwest. And so we moved back to Kansas City, and I joined 3 guys from Sprint and an attorney from Time Warner Telecom, TCI Time Warner, and we started a company during the dereg of telecom.
So tell our listeners what that means and what that meant, because that was a while ago, and talk about what that meant for society when telecom got deregulated.
Well, back in the day, AT&T controlled everything,
right.
And then the baby bells were broken up to Southwestern Bell and Cincinnati Bell, and a variety, U.S. West, and they controlled telecom, but it was still kind of a fiefdom, if you would. I'm a competitive guy,
right?
So you didn't have a choice, and then they said, okay, we're going to break up long distance. So you had a choice of long distance, which created Sprint and MCI and all that. But in 1996, the Telecom Act was passed, and that allowed people to compete with the incumbent telephone companies, and they actually had to let you use some of their assets so that competition started. And so this is 96. So in 97, we started this company, and it was purely for voice services. The internet wasn't a big thing back then.
Right.
And so we started and figured out a path, and then we woke up. We had 2,500 employees. We were in most every city of 70,000 and greater, from western Kansas to Atlantic Ocean and south. So we were in Miami and Jacksonville and New Orleans and also Topeka.
I was going to say, yeah, and also the little part of Kansas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience. Then there started to become some decisions to make on technology, and I thought there was a better way of doing it. So I left that company after raising, close to $1 billion in capital to fund that company, and had to sit out a non-compete. And so that non-compete forced me to go north. And in there, right around the 9/11, I also bought a manufacturing company. Well, that had an issue because we sold airplane parts, and it was right around 9/11, so it started to be in a situation where it had to join a bigger company. So I bought and sold that real quick. Well, I had another non-compete, and so now I've got 2 non-competes, and it was we headed back to Nebraska. We thought, hey, our kids are 5 and 8. We'll buy Jill's parents' grocery store, and I can start doing telecom probably in Denver, and but the kids will get to know their grandparents, which turned out to be one of the best decisions we made.
Right.
Because from 5 and 8 until they graduated, they were close to both sets of grandparents.
That's huge. Speaking from somebody who is fortunate enough to be close with both sets still today, that's a massive deal. You learn so much that you just wouldn't learn anywhere else, from just conversating with your grandparents, getting to know them, seeing what their lives were like when they were younger.
Well, and the parents get to learn some things too.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I knew it all. Sometimes I think I do, but
right.
My dad's 85 now, and I still call him for advice. So
yeah,
that played out, and then some people from Ogallala were having some phone troubles, and said, "Hey, why don't you start a phone company here, not there?" And I said, "Sure, why not? We'll try it." And it turned out that Nebraska had some particularly good situations for competitive telecom. And again, it's still telecom. This is 2003 now. And we knew we had to develop something in where we owned our own switch and we owned our own transport. And I stayed very close to our chief technologist at Birch. And we were testing lasers, we were testing wireless, a bunch of wacky solutions. And I said, God, if we could ever come up with something for a mid-sized community, have a telephone switch and transport, that would be the holy grail. Well, we figured it out, and that in 2005 we started building fiber, and that was 6-7 years before the iPhone.
Wow. So who had fiber before that
Well,
point?
there was like level 3, and there were some people, all the incumbents had some fiber, but they were really just connecting town to town and maybe...
And then dispersing like within the network of that, right?
Not much. They were using the telephone systems to do something called a T1, which was 1.5 meg up and down. And
for reference, what do we have up and down today?
Well, we offer 1,000 meg up and down to every home, or even a fraternity room, not a fraternity house, but a fraternity room.
Right.
So
really important for all the Warzone gamers out there.
Yeah,
to know,
exactly.
To know what's capable.
Exactly. And so, so we started as a phone company. And then really about 2006, 2007, that you could start to see the internet really changing the way the world works, and everything's IP. So we've never owned any coax, which is the cable system, and we've never owned any copper, which is most of the incumbent telcos. We've only owned fiber since then.
Right. So you made a bet on fiber. You knew fiber was the future. Yep. And so if we have to take this out, that's fine. But I have a question. So when this was getting started out in Western Nebraska, this is Imperial. Was there someone that wanted fiber in the middle of nowhere, like even outside of like one of the largest cities out there, and you guys routed that like a long, long distance? And like I heard that story. Can you shed some light on that?
Well, we really didn't take it to anybody very rural, but what happened was we're based in Imperial. And Imperial wasn't big enough. Mm-hmm. So we started in Scottsbluff and Gering. So, there's a 3-hour commute that I spent most of my time in Scottsbluff and Gering, Nebraska. And so we hooked up that area. And we had this brilliant plan that we were just going to build the downtown of Scottsbluff, and then it was going to expand. Then we were going to just build the downtown of Gering, and then it would expand. And I never planned on going to residential. Didn't have a solution or a need for it.
Just business, commercial.
Just business, because homes, we had DSL, and DSL was going to be all that we needed.
Right, because there wasn't the demand from a bandwidth standpoint.
Exactly. And so that brilliant idea lasted about a week. Right. When I went and talked to a bank and said, hey, this is what we're selling. Would you like to buy? And they said, yeah, we got 3 locations and 4 locations. If you could connect them all, we'll switch. No, we just want to connect this one. Well, that won't work. And so we're financing this out of my back pocket, mortgaging houses, mortgaging everything that we'd made
because
up
you
until
left without a big payout at all of these different companies. I mean, even when you had to, your 2 non-competes, either with Birch or with the airplane part company.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate. That's tough because you didn't really get to see that part through. But obviously, those are the little steps that were preparing you for what happens next.
Yeah, exactly. And I wouldn't say that I didn't make any money. I was part of the C-suite at 27. So I was being...
I didn't know, obviously, what the equity involvement was at that point.
And so I did reasonably well, but did I make the windfall? No.
Right.
And so the number one thing I did is when I talk to finance people or I talk to people who are willing to invest, the number one thing I said, I'll be the last one to make money. So you'll be paid off, you'll make all your money, and then I'll make mine. And so with the grocery stores and some other things going on, I didn't take a salary for close to a decade, which
Say that one more time for the listeners.
I didn't take a salary for close to a decade. So my wife, her business, Jill, she's a lot more competitive than I am and an incredible business person. And she went to Wesleyan and was really an artist before this. So she has no business training.
That's really interesting.
And she said, hey, if you kind of leave me alone, just let me take care of customers. You can kind of help me set my margins maybe once, but stay out of my way. We'll make more money and when the accountant got out of the deal, we started making more money.
The artist took over, right?
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, if you take care of your customer, most things will be solved.
Right.
You have to be smart, but that's the hard part. And most people think the spreadsheet is the hard part. It's really not.
It's really not. It's ignoring certain aspects of it in the short term because of the long-term gain. But that's just it, is like somebody that's way more emotionally connected to that customer, and they can really feel out their needs, and like I'm sure your wife has an incredible gauge on every single community where she's involved in. And I'm sure that you've probably learned a ton from her in that regard, just to stay connected to people.
Yeah. Not only does she know every community, she knows, one of the things that just blows me away is, let's say an elderly farmer, farm couple. The farmer's never been in the grocery store and his wife passes away. I've seen her walk around the farmer who's lost because he's never, he's been in the grocery store, but never had to make decisions.
Right.
And she has that mind that she'll go, no, you buy this, and you buy this, and you buy this, and you buy this, and you buy this, because she paid attention when they shopped there before. Now, is that scalable and all those types of things? No. But it's why it works.
Yeah, and that's exactly right.
And so when we started Allo, so now and then in 2011 we started offering voice services.
Was it always Allo?
Yeah.
From the very beginning. So what does it mean? What does Allo mean to you?
I really wish it meant something, but again, I'm an accountant by trade. Okay. So I had this business plan, great spreadsheet, and
wasn't even the best spreadsheet.
Wasn't even close to accurate. But anyway, and I called it yellow, as in yellow. When you pick up the phone. I thought that was really cute. Do you actually
say that?
No.
Oh, okay.
But it was tongue in cheek. And it was designed for a smaller community. And I was living in Kansas City, so I was probably looking down on small communities, even though I grew up in a town of 36.
Right.
So, it's just the way people are.
So yellow first, though.
Yeah. And I knew that wasn't the name, but I liked Sprint and Apple. And back then, I liked single syllable. Mm-hmm. I didn't want it to become AT&T, MCI, BTT, NTT, all those different things.
Right.
And so I was looking at it, and this friend of mine said, well, no, you can't call it yellow, YELLO. But how about Allo is French for hello? And I said, well, I'm not going to call it Allo. I said, but if Minot, North Dakota can be Minot, not Minot, I think I can make this Allo. Well, I didn't think about it, but it started with an A.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. It was nice and short, so we've never been some acronym.
Right.
And when I answer the phone, I say, Allo the spread. It's efficient. It identifies the company and that kind of thing.
Right.
And just luck.
Yeah.
And it's worked out since.
Interesting.
And it works out because it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, and then I think people would be surprised as to how many companies' names. I mean, Paul Jarrett has Bulu. Bulu didn't mean anything. I mean, It might mean something now to him, but when he started, he's just like, Hulu seems like a good company. What if we went with Bulu instead? And that, and look at it now, right? Now it has meaning that he gave to it, just like Allo does.
And Paul and I live on the same floor in the Canopy Street.
Oh, okay. So
apartments.
Yeah, you probably already knew that story. But,
yeah, I know Paul pretty well and love his little kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So what year was it when that all got started? When you came up and you're like, Allo is our company, we're moving forward.
So that was 2003, but then residential was kind of the big change. So we were in Scottsbluff and Gehring and Alliance, clear out west, and we wanted to go to Ogallala. And we were trying to figure out how we get our fiber there. And at the same time, the cable companies were starting to get into voice. Mm-hmm. We said, we've got to get into TV. And so we did. And then our business plan changed to, rather than just focusing on business, focus on changing the ecosystem of the community. And what that means is how the cities work with their residents, how the hospitals work with their patients, how the schools work with their students, and that if you're helping both sides, that then you can start seeing meaningful change. And so we applied our 4 values to be honest, local, exceptional, and hassle-free. now to a new utility covering the entire community. And today we still don't go much out into the country because we haven't figured out the financials of that. We're really not government supported, so each customer has to pay for themselves.
Right.
Or each group of customers.
Is the big keyword there, right? Hopefully that's about to change.
Yeah, and it really has. The state of Nebraska has done a wonderful job, really, particularly Network Nebraska. Mm-hmm. We had fiber to all of our schools, or substantially all of our schools, more than a decade ago. Well, that built out this incredible network that then can allow moving out to the homes of these communities. Now there's some things like RDOF and CAF2, and it's a bunch of regulatory things that is the government's paying to get fiber out to the producers, whether it's a rancher or anyone living out of the metro area.
Right.
There's also some great wireless providers in Nebraska, particularly out in western Nebraska where there's not as much foliage. My dad, 18 miles from town's had 50 by 10 for probably 6 or 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And he's 18 miles from town,
right,
outside of a town that's now down to probably 18 people, not 36.
What was the town called one more time?
Lamar, Nebraska.
Lamar, yeah, right. So 18 people now.
Yeah.
So
and
post office, bar?
No, nothing.
Nothing, okay.
The school's closed, the post office closed. I don't know that there was ever a bar in that little town.
So you made the jump from saying, well, we're going to go in this commercial only plan, right? Mm-hmm. And then you talk to that bank and they're like, well, you got to connect all of them. And so I guess I missed that. What happened after that point when you talked to that person? What did you do next?
Well, I mortgaged more things and I built the fiber to all of them.
Got it.
Because in the end, my job is to please the customer. Mm-hmm. The customer doesn't care if it costs more money.
They don't care if you have to mortgage your house.
They don't care about that. And in that case, the bank eventually, like 4 years later, was one of my lenders. But anyway, not that day.
Right.
So you just, one of the things with my financial background, capital has really never been a problem. It's always the problem, but it's always a solvable problem. Always. You can find the right person. And so then we started growing, and then the state of Nebraska and western Nebraska was one of our largest customers. And, they'd said, you need to come to Lincoln. And I said, well, I don't know. Lincoln's too much money. And so I did a back of the envelope, and I know what I thought it would cost to do Lincoln. And then a friend of mine in the business, business acquaintance said, hey, I really need you to meet with Mike Dunn and Chuck Norris in Ashland, Nebraska. And it was on a Friday, much like today. Pretty nice day. I don't take a lot of time off. And I'm driving all the way across the state to meet with some farmers because I thought they were farmers. Ashland, ag community.
Ashland, Milford, right?
Yeah. And so I thought, I'm going to waste this entire day. And so actually I put it off a few times. And they said, come on, they want to build some fiber in Ashland. You need to meet with these guys. I said, all right. Well, I didn't do any research on the meeting, which that's fundamental. You should always research when you don't know somebody, but I didn't. And so I went out and met with them. We drove around Ashland. We drove out to the lake communities, and they said, we want to put in fiber. And I gave them a number that was significantly higher than others had given them. And they said, wow, others thought they could do it for this. And I said, they'll be back in your pocket 3 times. And I think they recognized that situation. And I said, and in the end, we're going to make a few dollars or lose a few dollars, and that's a hobby. And I'm not really into a hobby. I'm really pushing into Colorado now. And they said, well, what would make it more interesting? I said, you got to have at least 60,000 people in a region to make it interesting. And I said, I can see Gretna from here, and I think I drove through a couple other towns. I don't know how many it takes to work. And Mike said, well, what about Lincoln? And I said, I looked at Lincoln a long time ago, and here's the number. I said, it's a lot of money to do Lincoln. all right, we shook hands and said we'd get back together. And I thought that was the last time I'd meet with those farmers.
Yeah.
And so I drove home, and on Monday morning, the phone rang, and Mike said, "Hey, I've got the money. Can you meet with the mayor of Lincoln and me, because I think we should just build Lincoln." Well, I don't know much in life, but when somebody said they had the money of the number I quoted, that's a big number. And I said, sure.
Done.
I'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, then I Googled
what was your thought? Like, what were you thinking? That must have been such a crazy, like, emotional moment for you. Like something that you knew was going to completely change your life at that point.
Well, I knew you never kill an opportunity before you know what it is. I didn't think it would happen. I've been around. And so until I Googled Mike Dunlap. And I went,
that's when it did for you.
Well, it turns out they do own a little farm ground in Chase County.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's their primary business.
No, not really. For the listeners, why don't you go ahead and cue the listeners in as to who Mike Dunlap was at that point today.
His family has banking businesses throughout Nebraska, Union Bank being one, and the primary one. And then he was the founder of Nelnet, which is the largest student loan processing company and a $2 billion plus market cap public company. Mm-hmm. So, when I Googled Mike Dunlap, that's when I finally said, hey, this could be a possibility. Mm-hmm. And from after that, the city was great to work with. We had some bumps in the road, but if you look at the entire project, both sides couldn't have done better. And this is one of the largest, if not the largest, ubiquitous build of fiber in the United States, in a competitive sense. And, even Google Fiber still isn't done with Kansas City. Matter of fact, they're probably not even a third done. In other communities, they don't finish. And in our world, it's very important, whether small business, large business, governmental, individual residents, or an apartment complex, low income, high income, everybody needs the connectivity. Helps with the digital divide, helps with just opportunity. Mm-hmm. So we believe in building everything. And we got it built here. So when we started, back then, Mayor Beitler did the quote in that meeting that said, Lincoln has the 26th ranked internet in the state of Nebraska. How can Bridgeport, Nebraska be in the top 6? And I said, well, the top 6 are all mine. And we'll get you there. I'm not exactly humble in certain times. It's a fact, and I'll defend it.
Yeah.
Well, it's fun that now we fast forwarded to Lincoln, Nebraska is ranked number 4 in the country of the top 100 cities. So we're behind Kansas City, San Antonio, and Austin, but we're ahead of all the rest.
It's incredible.
And
it's truly a major feat going from that far below to now having an opportunity to provide somebody in the middle of, what we talked about as people consider, quote, flyover country, now has some of the fastest internet in the world.
And why shouldn't we?
Right.
And whether you like to live in Lincoln or Scottsbluff or Gering or Alliance or Ogallala, Hastings, Norfolk, we're in the process of building that. Why can't you choose these wonderful communities to live and do business or entertainment with anywhere in the world? It's a great opportunity, and we're seeing that. I can tell you story after story of a little town where someone's working and managing internets in a far-off land, or in New York City for a major metropolitan company, or that the fact that you can go online and you can walk through the Museum of History in Afghanistan if you wanted to.
Right.
And it's like you were there. And it's not halty and jittery and those types of things. Or you can transact business. Or in today's world with COVID, why would you live in a major metro area like Seattle or San Francisco or San Jose when you're working at home anyway?
You're going to work from home.
You're going to make the same salary living in Lincoln, Nebraska or Imperial, Nebraska. And the money goes a little further out here.
A lot further.
As well as your quality of life, I think. I personally don't like humidity, so I spend most of my summers in western Nebraska. But you should be able to live wherever you want, be entertained, transact business, and it's a wonderful thing.
What was it like when you guys got acquired by Nelnet? What was that whole process like?
Well, it really it built us to a next level of scale. We went from 100 people to 500 people.
And were you already in Lincoln by the time you got acquired?
No. Well, we were in just a real minor.
Small way.
But
like that was a crux of both of those moments, though, as the acquisition was also.
And it was actually directed at that. At first we were talking, why doesn't Nelnet loan us the money or Mike loan us the money to do this? And then pretty soon it was, wait, that's the tail wagging the dog because Lincoln is so big. And today it's 300,000 or 280,000 of our 425,000 population. It's still most. Mm-hmm. So it did that. We went from 100 employees to 500 employees. So it developed some scale, developed some sophistication that we didn't have in some depth of the network and redundancy. Also brought in some new leadership because of the new scale. We recruited some other people. Some came from Nelnet, some came from competitors. One guy came from the Pentagon. Awesome. And he runs our construction, and it's just a perfect fit. But then the head of marketing, customer service, technical support service, they're all from the original company. So it's a nice mesh of this incredible just group that just cares so much about customer service, and then brought in some people that helped with the scale.
Yeah. And what was your process, or what was your thought process in March of 2020? Like what was going through your head during this whole crazy time?
Well, I'm going to take you to January of 2020.
January. Okay. So you had a little something, bit of an idea.
No, it isn't that. But in January 2020, I was on a panel, and it was me and a bunch of cable people. And the debate was, is cable good enough? Why do fiber? 45 days later, I haven't heard that debate in the last 5 months. And the main reason is upload speeds and latency. Our upload speeds in Lincoln are ranked third in the country, not fourth, but third. And our latency is number 2. Well, what does that mean? That means you can learn from home or work from home or be entertained as well as anywhere in the country, if not world. This is truly a world-class network. So it's and again, we're in 13 communities, including Breckenridge, Colorado, and Fort Morgan, Colorado, and we're going to be building there as well. So when COVID happened, the first thing I thought about is I thought our network was really good. But now we're going to kind of get away from the bravado, if you will, and it's going to get proven. And so I talked to a lot of our technical people and said, hey, get ready, it's coming. Well, third week in March, between the Nelnet corporate group and some of their other investments, we helped move somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 people from offices home. And the people who were on Allo got a great experience. Not everyone, but it was in the high 90s. And then we fixed the rest.
Right.
And a lot of it was just helping people, hey, I don't know how to do X. Well, we weren't making any more money on it, but of course we helped them.
Right.
And then it started to come out, all the stresses that were on the networks nationwide. We still hadn't hit 40% of our network usage.
So, okay, that was the number one question I had coming into this is you have all of this availability as far as your bandwidth goes. And you came into COVID and you were as cool as a cucumber, to my understanding. Like, you were not remotely worried about the fact that these people were going to go from having all of this bandwidth taken up at your, your business locations, everybody working off of one network, to now going to individualized networks on their own home routers.
Correct.
That didn't worry you at all.
Well, I was worried for about an hour.
Okay,
because,
what was that hour like?
Well, all of a sudden you came to this realization that you said, wait, the use of our network is going to change. So I'm smart enough to know how little I know about technology. And so I called some of our engineers and our leaders in that area, and I said, what's going to be the problem? And one of the first comments was, this is what our network was built for. And I've said it in a simple way for years, but this is really what happened. As I said, isn't it interesting that broadband is the only utility? And again, that's all it is a utility. Isn't it interesting that it's the only utility that we get a little less than we need? We get plenty of water or electricity or sewer or any of those types of things. But for some reason, throughout time, broadband, we've always given them a little less than they need as a consumer or a commercial application. Well, from day one at Allo, we've said, let's give people more than they need. And then let's always be looking out 2, 3, 4, 5 years to make sure we're always giving them more than they need. So when this happened, that's not a big deal.
You're already ready.
Yeah. And it was the design, it was some of our heritage. One of the co-founders of the company, who's no longer with us, but he firmly believed in, you make the network rock solid, and so we can all sleep at night. Mm-hmm. Well, that combined with incredible customer service, really you're solving the same equation.
Yeah.
Allowed it to be ready.
Yeah, because the customer service people are just Band-Aids at that point for a bad network.
But the real challenge, and Don Schoening here in Lincoln just provided the most amazing leadership. I'm more of an entrepreneur. We'll just get through it and we'll figure it out. Well, he took COVID very seriously. I want to say the 7th of March.
Wow. So that's, the
yeah.
shutdowns started happening on the 13th, right?
Yeah.
Around there?
Yep. So he probably started a little earlier than that. And he's led our team and our response. Early on, he separated the technicians from the customer service reps. He said, we can't be intermingling people, because if we all get sick, what are we going to do?
Right.
So very quickly he did that. Then Nelnet provided great leadership and sent everybody home. And then Don led all these teams to re-engineer our processes. And I got to see it today, and we call it the Allo drive-through, where each of our service vans and technicians come through, and the inventory people set it outside. They don't hand it. They're not talking to each other. The technicians put it in their van. There wasn't interaction there. There was, but it was either electronic, the order, or they could tell by the marking on the van, the number, that this is what they need. They load, they go out. Masks are mandatory. We're still working from home. We'll probably be working from home at least till the end of the year. We've been very healthy. Mm-hmm. And that leadership was phenomenal, because the most important thing in our role is the safety of our team. I firmly believe no one works for me. We work together. And I don't believe we're a family. We're more of a team. Family, you kind of are stuck with for the rest of your life.
Right.
And a team can choose to go elsewhere, or we can, choose to bring somebody else in. And our team is so valuable to us, because that's what provides the customer service. But we've been healthy. Because of our technology, we've offered great levels of customer service. We have a Net Promoter Score that's consistently between 70 and 80.
What does that mean?
Net Promoter Score is is if you get a 9 or a 10 on a review,
Oh, okay.
that's a +1.
Okay.
If you get a 7 or 8, that's a 0. If you get anything below a 7, 6 or to 0, that's a -1. So you can actually have a negative net promoter score, and actually many of our competitors do.
Oh.
And
Nielsen's are the ones measuring stuff like this?
well, you measure it internally.
You measure it internally?
But the best part is with our relationship with our parent company, Nelnet believes in net promoter scores at a very high level. You don't mess with the numbers. So that little survey you get after an interaction where you say, would you give this a 9 or a 10 or a 6 or a 7? That all gets rolled up into a net promoter score. And world-class companies are at 80, 75, and we've been above 75 some, but for a telecom,
that's huge.
Yeah, because not many people enjoy calling their telecom company.
No.
And matter of fact, that's been one of the biggest things we've had to change is that environment that, oh my gosh, I'm going to be on the phone for 2 hours. I'm going to find some idiot and they're not going to help me.
Right. They're not going to help at all.
And when we first come into new communities, that's one of the things we have to teach our customers. No. Calm down. You don't have to fight for this. We want your service to work well too.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing.
That is the adversarial nature of working with like Dish or any of the other competitors, the incumbents as you talk, is like when you get on the phone, or like sadly Verizon is a great example of that sometimes, where you have to almost like try and fight for what you or what you believe you're entitled to within that company and like what they should be giving you. And everybody, they do take that attitude when they start calling. And so that's been really interesting because I said at the very beginning of this episode, I don't ever call Allo, so I have no idea what it's like to talk to them, and I'm sure that's what you want. But the one time I think I called them just to get set up, it was seamless. I mean, the whole process, and I have not talked to them since.
Well, one, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Number two, I won't comment on any specific competitor. But maybe the most important is, remember when I talked about our values, and one was to be honest. Isn't it interesting that a value is honest? Well, clear back in the old long distance days, there was all these games and people doing some pretty evil things. And I thought it was real important to be honest. Well, I consider part of honesty is that we offer always fair pricing. Mm-hmm. So the person who's been with us for 2 days and the person who's been with us for 6 years are going to pay the exact same amount. Mm-hmm. We don't do the deal of the day, where you start real low and then it goes up every